To you, Eric Connor, your father left money in the sum of $50,000, the lawyer said, as he glanced at the will of Edward Connor, reading further in silence. Eric's father died a week before of heart failure. He never really knew his old man. Eric, still an infant at the time, lived with his mother after a nasty divorce. Edward kept distancing himself every chance he had after that. Eric held his wife's hand tightly in happiness. They were in financial debt. Bills the Connor family had to deal with were expensive and only growing by the months. Their only child had a hard time in school since the other students in class would ridicule him for being poor. Young Charlie would run back home in tears, wishing he wouldn't have to go back to school the next day. Eric couldn't stand seeing his son so depressed. The lawyer's eyes widened a little as he said, "Hold on, Mr. Connor. The will also states that you have to go to your father's old home, find his dogs, and take them away from the property with all haste." Eric looked at the lawyer with a curious expression, wondering why his dad added that. The lawyer said that the will strongly kept wording, "Get them out." Eric agreed to the terms. The next day while Charlie was in school, Eric and his wife Stephanie headed to his dad's home. The drive took them to a small town filled with kind and happy people. Eric had an idea brewing in his mind, but wouldn't tell his wife the plan yet until they arrived at their destination. Upon arrival, the couple looked at the abandoned home in awe. The house had been a beautiful white painted abode, with a small garage that appeared to shelter the two elderly dogs resting comfortably. Eric began to smile and asked his wife if she wanted to go inside. The two began heading to the home when the dogs suddenly barked. Stephanie stopped in her tracks. The dogs turned their heads, growling at the house. Eric told Stephanie not to pay them any mind as he turned the key to the knob. The door opened with a long creak. The interior of the home had indeed been beautiful. Upon inspection, Eric noticed 3 rooms, a kitchen, bathroom, and spacious living room. Stephanie loved the place. However, something made her feel uneasy. She couldn't exactly pinpoint what made her feel that way. Eric decided to finally tell his wife that they were going to move into the house. A big smile on Stephanie's face lit up as she tearfully agreed. The lawyer gave Eric the keys to the house, reminding him that his father Edward didn't intend for anyone to live there, placing the home on the realty's unwanted list. The price had been reduced for Eric, as he excitedly purchased the home for a meager $12,000. A week passed. The family began setting up. Charlie loved his new hometown. His classmates were great kids who treated him well. He would often brag about the girls who had their eyes set on a new kid. Stephanie sorted out all the moving box items to their proper places, making sure that the home would have very little traces of its former owner. Eric found a good job at a car dealership. The family finally found the peace that they needed in order to have a stable life for a change. 3 months later, the couple quickly woke up from bed as they made a mad dash into Charlie's room. The boy was screaming in fear. Eric calmed his frantic son down. Charlie, covered in sweat, had finally spoke. "Dad, something grabbed my sheets and pulled them off me, then held my arms so I couldn't move." The tired father held him and replied, "Don't worry, son. It was only a dream. You can sleep with us tonight, okay?" Charlie agreed, quickly running into his parents' room. He held his mom and dad's arm tightly before finally drifting off. That following day, Stephanie was washing dishes while Eric had been getting ready to go to work. He quickly grabbed a piece of toast, kissed his wife's cheek, and headed out the door. A moment later, she felt his hands caressing her back and buttocks. "Go to work, silly, or you're going to be late," she said. However, as she looked out the window, his car had already left the driveway. Stephanie felt afraid. She looked around the house, eventually noticing that she was the only one there. She decided to bring in the dogs for company. Once in a while, they would lightly growl at random spots, confusing her. A week later, Eric had the day off while Stephanie and Charlie went to the mall. The tired salesman kicked up his feet and turned on the TV to watch a movie when he heard something break in the kitchen. "Who's there?" he said in a nervous tone. The silence in the house had been intensely eerie. However, nothing was in the kitchen. Eric looked down on the floor, noticing shattered pieces of a glass cup, which had been odd since the glass dishes were safely stored in the kitchen cabinet. Eric thought it might have been a mouse or something else to excuse his mind of anything paranormal. He got a broom and cleaned the mess. The following night, Stephanie heard small bangs in the living room. Eric was fast asleep, so she decided to see where the noise was coming from. Going down the stairs, she could hear what sounded like something being bounced off the wall. "Charlie, go to sleep, young man. It's late," Stephanie said in a stern voice. The noise didn't stop. The angry mother walked into the living room hallway to notice a small pair of hands catching a small ball every time it bounced off the wall. As she was about to once again warn Charlie, Stephanie heard someone coming from upstairs. "Mom, is everything okay?" Charlie said in a tired voice. Stephanie frightenedly turned around to see a small ball bounce in her direction until it stopped at her feet. The hands bouncing the ball were gone. From that moment on, the family had been a little more silent. There was definitely something supernatural in the house. Eric, being an atheist, however, didn't believe in such things as heaven, hell, or ghosts. Hours later, the family quietly watched a television show. Eric placed a blanket on he and his wife, while his hand began caressing her leg. Stephanie felt frisky. She loved the attention she would get from her husband. His hands explored her thoroughly, firmly gripping her leg. Stephanie looked at Eric with a sexy glance. He puckered his lips to kiss hers, placing both his hands in the back of his head while concentrating on the show. Stephanie, however, still felt the hand caressing her. Gently, she pulled off the blanket. To her and her husband's horror, a ghostly hand had been groping Stephanie roughly. Eric tried to help her by removing the phantom hand, but more hands came out of nowhere to subdue him firmly. Hands by the hundreds appeared in the house, some clapping and some punching Charlie, while others ripped off Stephanie's clothes. Eric tried to get free while screaming for help. Hands came to him, punching his body and scratching his face. The dogs came into the house to help, when uncountable hands completely covered both the old pets. Crackling and bubbling sounds came from the canines as the hands crushed every bone in their furry bodies. Disembodied laughs began to fill the air, not the kind of laughing normal people let out, more like the kind of laughing you hear mentally ill people make. Smashing sounds came from the kitchen. Numerous hands threw silverware, dishes, and other items in every direction. The hands fumbled into the cabinet that had jiggling sounds emanating from it. All the hands stopped in place. Several hands that appeared to be wearing rubber gloves reached into the cabinet and pulled out knives of various sizes. The sharp utensils floated in the air, dancing back and forth. Hands appeared next to Charlie as they forced him to lay on the ground. A hand holding one of the large butcher knives began to delicately drag the knife on Charlie's leg. The helpless parents began to scream in terror. "Leave him alone!" they both frantically yelled. The psychotic laughing echoed across the house, falling into silence when the knife stopped at its target, Charlie's upper leg. The knife slowly worked its way into the boy's flesh, making him scream in pain. The hands began clapping, while the laughing commenced. Eric tried fighting the hand's strong grips. He couldn't fight something that had no physical substance. It was decided that he would do something that he never tried before, and pray. The weeping father began reciting pieces of the Bible entries that he learned from his mother so long ago. The laughs turned into cries of torment. The hands let the family go while moving around rapidly in the air. The family ran to the car, turning it on as Eric floored the gas pedal, ensuring their escape. A mile down the road, Stephanie patched up Charlie's leg. The first stop would be at the hospital. The drive was calming. Charlie sat asleep next to his mom on the front passenger seat. Eric put his arm behind Stephanie's back and caressed her hair. "It's going to be okay, honey. We're almost there," he said. Stephanie relaxed a little. She looked at the front mirror and took a double take. On the mirror, she could see that Eric's hand had been caressing Charlie's head the whole time. The hand on top of her head gripped her hair tightly. A disembodied voice laughed as the hand smashed her face on the dashboard. Eric panicked, seeing 5 hands pull the steering wheel hard to the left, making the car smash into a tree, killing the family instantly. The police had finished investigating the scene. Forensics came back with a strange discovery. The steering wheel had numerous fingerprints that, upon analysis, showed that most of them belonged to people who had died over 30 years ago. These people had one thing in common. They were all mental patients. It was soon discovered further on that the house, once owned by the late Edward Connor, had been directly on the site of an old insane asylum that had burned down years back. One of the doctors had a problem with cleanliness. His patients always had the habit of touching things. The countless messy hands, leaving prints and smudges behind, finally made the doctor snap. He locked the asylum up, tight, rounded up every patient, and sawed off their hands. The doctor then lit the asylum ablaze, believing that the fire would cleanse everything. No one survived, save for one man, an orderly who managed to escape through a small shattered window to tell the police what transpired. This orderly was none other than Edward Connors himself, mind-racked with survivor's guilt. Edward used what money he had left to have his future house built on the site where the mass murder was committed. Having heard what he was about to do, his wife left him and took baby Eric with her.